You want to say hello to yourself? Hello. Hello, world. What's your name? My name's Luis.
Listen, don't knock the water over. Be careful, okay?
You're eating an apple, and I'm having a delicious, delicious breakfast sandwich, right?
A pie.
A pie.
The stars wash over me so far away that I can barely breathe from where I lay. Never have I been so far from home or the years I was caught from sand and rain. I'm calling through ebb and flow. I'm calling whichever way to go.
Healy's like a watering hole of Alaska. That's not just because of the good food or company you'll meet, but because of the fact that there's a giant grocery store. So stocking up on 4 or 5 days worth of food and propane, I came out of Three Bears and saw Annalisa talking to someone. It was Abra, who's a fellow type 1 diabetic who'd been following us on Instagram. She was returning home to Anchorage when she spotted our bikes and immediately pulled over. We captured a few photographs and talk about the chances of us actually meeting there at the same time. These are the moments that make you realize maybe fate brought us together. We also get to see James before leaving town, who we met on the train ride coming up from Anchorage.
Yeah, that's Mushrooms Monument right there. You see the point on that one, and then the next point, and then the lower point to it.
James drove down to meet us at Rose's Cafe. It's where all the locals get together and portions are as big as your face. He's up for the summer working at Denali Dinner Theater, where halfway through the meal, waiters become actors in an interactive play. He simply wanted to hear more about our adventures, where we wanted to hear more about his. And since James knows we're always hungry cyclists, he told us when we reached Cantwell to check out JP's Meat Pie Shop. Jenny left New Orleans and wanted to bring one of her city's staples up to Alaska. And along the way, of course, her energetic daughter Louisa came along. And we didn't really have a choice but to become her babysitter and playmates for the hour or two that we were there. And who could complain?
Also, as a side note, Luis and Annalisa, you guys are matching, right?
Yep.
Good luck with everything. It's turning into a classic day of biking. About 30 seconds ago, I dropped my jelly jar, then cut my finger on the glass picking it up, and now my handlebar bag, it looks like this right here, got stripped, so I got a little maintenance to do.
There is a phrase that was repeated to Annalisa and I over and over again, and that's Alaskans look out for each other. So here I was trying to cut this small frayed wire when Dave and Derek with their families pulled over to lend a helping hand. Soon we'd be looking over our shoulder to someone else pulling over to make sure everything was going okay. And in these moments, you're reminded that the world isn't filled with fear and terrorism, but rather lots of people who are looking to help out in the small ways to make sure everything's going okay. So Derek, Dave, Molly, and Penny, thank you so much for stopping by. It really means a lot.
What was your favorite part of the Denali Highway?
So when Annalisa and I pulled over for our first campsite, we just sat out on this ridge, and there's just fields of lakes, those mountains in the background, and it's just like, wow, like Alaska not only was beautiful right in the beginning, but here in the second week it continued to like meet and exceed those expectations.
Travel tip number 40 is that if you fly a drone 10 feet above your head while you're eating, it will get rid of all the mosquitoes.
The sky like a bruise, smoking your last cigarette on the stoop at the end of the night. A cold wind blew
this morning, Annalisa and I actually prepped all of our tent supplies, panniers, all that sort of stuff, and then had breakfast. And 1 second. They're resurfacing the road around here. And the big difference is that should help prevent a blood sugar spike, so we're able to eat and then bike ride right away. You see, if you're an athlete without type 1 diabetes, then you really just have to worry about your calorie consumption and water consumption, just how much energy and making sure you're not dehydrated. Where Annalisa, every time we eat, our blood sugar overall will start going up, and so we have to use certain strategies like leveraging the fact that exercise brings our blood sugars down and syncing that up with our meal times, so we're able to keep our calorie consumption up without absolutely destroying our blood sugars. And that's one of the tricky balances of touring with type 1. Whew. This road's also super bumpy.
I can't identify. Those eyes define and insecure at the same time where we stood in the road. Your hair on my coat, you're smelling my clothes at the end of the night. I fell asleep.
The Sluice Box is this funky bar along the highway, and its walls are covered in dollar bills, and it seems like it's been around for 200 years. Eventually, Stacy rolls in, who's a bike packer and physician who tells us that she always tries to take advantage of her long weekends. She munches on a pie from JP's, and she tells us that she covers about 100 miles a day. And it makes me realize that we're all going at different paces, but we really love meeting other cyclists out on the road who share this passion for a simple life, of carrying everything that we need on our two wheels, and covering these wild distances, powered not by gas, but by the ridiculous amount of food we eat.
Annalisa and I kind of woke up in a really groggy state. Last night after a wonderful dinner over the fire pit, my blood sugar went to 350 overnight and then came back down to 100. And what that feels like is kind of waking up with like a mix of a hangover, a fever, and a flu, just like an achy body, really sore, maybe didn't have enough water yesterday. And so just 3 miles later was this. I'm Randy.
I'm Vicki. We're the Myers. We live half-time in Kansas and half-time in Arizona. And he farms.
And while having lunch, what are you drinking?
Yeah.
And now we'll get to the point.
I'm drinking a tomato beer.
Which is?
It's just beer and tomato juice.
Simple as that.
It's called a red beer.
Since we've been lounging around for 2 or 3 hours at this point, we probably overstayed our welcome. So after answering a few more questions we were peppered with, Annalisa and I decided to split an apple pie and then get out the door. I'm guessing it's been 5 days without a shower, maybe 6.
Yeah, I'll just be watching because this water is too cold.
Nothing like climbing a little summit first thing in the morning. We're on top of McLaren Summit, and what's awesome, and it's gonna be really far away, but you can actually see a glacier super far off in the distance.
One person who you met that kind of sticks out?
Getting destroyed by bugs right now. Yeah, just today I thought it was really cool. There's these two guys, well, there's actually three guys on fat tire bikes. We pulled over, and I was chatting with them, and then Annalisa pulled up, and she had her Dexcom right on her arm. And it happens to be that there's a dad there whose daughter is a type 1 diabetic. And so they had type none bandanas on, type none socks, which I totally didn't notice. And then I was talking to them, I was like, oh, do you guys know about looping? And his daughter is looping. And so I'm like, what are the chances you meet someone else who's looping out in Alaska, let alone a biker and type 1? And that was like a really special moment, and kind of feels like fate that you actually sync up in the middle of kind of nowhere.
So if I hold you, if I do, if my shadow leans up on you too, no good intent.
We reach the end of the Denali Highway, where we meet this group of military personnel who are lounging on the steps of this abandoned resort and tell us about this decrepit building behind them and how the owners got up and left 4 years ago and didn't really bother to take anything with them. And it just leaves me thinking how I love how this Denali adventure is bookended with yet another story you can't make up.
Will you still know which way to go at the end of the night? At the end of the night, there are no more stars left in the sky, and all the black turns in.
These are pinks you're catching?
Yeah.